Hello, friends. Today, we're talking about one of the most high-profile and perplexing child disappearances of the 21st century. This is a story that has drawn in thousands of investigators, dozens of countries, and millions of people. 3-year-old British girl Madeleine McCann vanished from a hotel room in Portugal. She disappeared without a trace while her parents dined nearby. Everything seemed calm. A resort, a vacation, a happy family. But then, silence, an empty bed, an open window. What happened that night? Where did the little girl go? Madeleine Beth McCann was born in Leicester, England in May 2003. Her parents, Kate and Gerry McCann, were respected medical professionals. Gerry was a cardiologist, Kate an anesthesiologist. They dreamed of having children and struggled for years to conceive. Madeleine was their first child. She was a smiling, curious girl with big eyes and a distinctive mark in one of them, a detail that would later be printed on posters around the world. The family lived a stable, comfortable life. In May 2007, they went on vacation to Praia da Luz, Portugal, with friends. But what began as a getaway turned into a nightmare they would never escape. May 3rd, 2007, a warm evening at a resort villa. Madeleine was sleeping in the room with her younger twin siblings. Her parents were dining with friends at a restaurant 50 meters away. The adults took turns checking on the children, or so they later explained to the police. But at 10 p.m., Kate McCann entered the room and saw an empty bed. The window was open. The shutters were raised. Madeleine was gone. Thus began the largest international search for a child since the Lindbergh baby case, a disappearance that shocked America in 1932. Back then, the 20-month-old son of famous aviator Charles Lindbergh was kidnapped from his crib at home. The search lasted weeks. The nation held its breath. But the ending was tragic. The baby was found dead. Madeleine's case became not just a national trauma, but a turning point for a new era of child abduction investigations. Before launching the search, the police took a step back. They reconstructed the day Madeleine disappeared minute by minute, as if hoping a distress signal was hidden in the chain of ordinary events. So here it is, May 3rd, 2007. The resort town of Praia da Luz, Portugal. A hot, lazy day. The McCann family woke up in their cozy, rented ground floor apartment at the Ocean Club complex. Everything seemed calm. Everything was going according to plan. In the morning, Gerry and Kate took the kids to the children's club, a common feature at European resorts. Madeleine, just 3 years old, went there with her twin brother and sister. There were entertainers, games, songs, a time when the parents could relax too. The day passed steadily. At 12:30 p.m., lunch with the whole group, the McCanns and their friends. They laughed, discussed plans, and arranged the evening dinner schedule. Witnesses said Madeleine was active, cheerful, a normal kid. Then, the pool. Around 2:30 p.m., you've probably seen the photo. Madeleine in a swimsuit sitting by the poolside between her father and sister. She's smiling. That's the last confirmed image of her alive. Later, back to the kids' club. Then, an early dinner for the children at 5:30 p.m. They were fed and put to bed early because the parents were heading to dinner at the Tapas Bar, 50 meters from the apartment. No one knew then that this dinner would end in a nightmare the world would dissect minute by minute. When a child disappears, police always start with the obvious. The circle of those who were nearby, those who were supposed to protect them, the parents. At first, British and Portuguese police worked together, sharing evidence, hypotheses, and theories. But the longer Madeleine remained missing, the more questions the investigation had for Kate and Gerry McCann. In August 2007, 3 months after the disappearance, the couple was officially named arguidos, suspects under Portuguese law. And here begins the darkest twist in this story. The police claimed that cadaver dogs, specially trained to detect the scent of decomposition, reacted to Kate's clothing in the trunk of a car the McCanns rented 25 days after Madeleine vanished. For forensic experts, this was a major lead. These dogs are trained not to make mistakes. They don't go by sight, they follow the scent of death. They can detect it even if a body has long been removed. The dogs didn't react in the room where Madeleine had been staying, but they did in the car and in other parts of the apartment, especially on a soft toy Kate always carried with her. The investigation built a grim theory. What if this wasn't an abduction, but an accident gone wrong? What if Madeleine died that night by accident from a fall and overdose of sedatives, something the parents couldn't explain? What if, in a panic, the McCanns hid her death, staged a kidnapping and disposed of the evidence? On paper, the theory was cold but logical. A scent in the car trunk. The same scent on the mother's clothes. The car rented 25 days after the disappearance. Perhaps, police speculated, a body had been stored somewhere in the meantime before being moved and hidden. But the problem was in the details. No forensic test could confirm Madeleine's DNA in the car. All results were inconclusive, partial, fragmented. The dogs gave a signal, but a dog's signal isn't courtroom evidence. It's intuition, not proof. The investigation lacked the essentials: a body, a motive, a timeline. It was all speculation. The McCanns refused a lie detector test, but only on their lawyer's advice, a standard legal move in their situation. Not an admission of guilt, but a fear of error. The accusations were eventually dropped, but the shadow remained. From that moment, the family was no longer seen as unequivocal victims. The more they appeared on air, gave interviews, and raised funds, the more society split. Some saw desperate parents, others saw people whose stories didn't add up. When the evidence crumbled and time dragged on, the vacuum of truth filled with guesses. And while the police couldn't provide answers, the public began looking for someone to blame. The media onslaught hit fast and hard. The McCann family became victims not just of tragedy, but of a press siege. Journalists, tabloids, talk shows, all seemed to compete to crack the mystery first. Instead of compassion, they faced millions of accusing stares. Why did they leave the kids alone? Asked newspaper columnists. Why isn't Kate crying on camera? Demanded reporters, flashing cameras in her face. Why are they so calm? Talk shows insisted, as if grief comes with a manual. The McCanns explained they checked on the sleeping kids every 15 to 20 minutes. But that wasn't enough for the public. The press wanted blood. The audience wanted drama. And the more the McCanns tried to hold themselves together with dignity, the more suspicious they seemed. People started digging into their past, their marriage, their every move, looking for any slip, any awkwardness, any inconsistency, what they said, and how. How they looked at each other, how long they paused before answering. But psychologists said, suffering doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes grief paralyzes. Sometimes it fuels superhuman focus. Sometimes a mother who lost her daughter doesn't cry on camera because she can't afford to. Still, society kept pressing. The pressure was everywhere, on the streets, on TV, in headlines. The McCanns became not just the parents of a missing girl, but characters in a theater of collective suspicion. And yet, the main question lingered, quieter than all the noise. If not them, then who? When all the evidence fell apart and theories unraveled, a spark of hope emerged. A witness, family friend Jane Tanner, said she saw a man carrying a child in pajamas, in the same area, that same night, at the same time. A team of top forensic experts was assembled. A sketch was drawn. London called in Interpol. The Portuguese press buzzed. Maybe this was him, the one who took Madeleine. Databases were searched. An international manhunt began. Theories of child trafficking, pedophile rings, and organized crime surfaced. The world held its breath. And nothing. Weeks passed. Months. Hope faded again. The sketch hung on police station walls like a shadow hiding silence. Then, 6 years later, a new twist. In 2013, the British TV program Crime Watch aired the same sketch again. And someone responded, him, a man, a tourist, British. He came forward to investigators and said, "Yes, that was me. I was carrying my daughter home from a kids' club party. She fell asleep. I picked her up, that's all." The investigation checked. Names matched, timing fit. The route was identical. The child was alive and well, and definitely not Madeleine. And there it was, the disappointment that made investigators' hands drop. 6 years. 6 years chasing a false lead. For all that time, one of the key clues was just the shadow of an ordinary father walking down a night street with his daughter in his arms. It seemed over. A full stop. An ending without answers. But in 2020, 13 years after Madeleine's disappearance, a new voice cut through the silence. This wasn't a journalist, a blogger, or an armchair detective. This was an official statement from Germany's federal prosecutor's office. And it wasn't a hint. It was a name. Christian Bruckner, a convicted pedophile, a rapist. And, by strange coincidence, in 2007 he was right there, in Praia da Luz. His cell phone was traced near the hotel where the McCanns stayed. He owned an old van he often lived in. He roamed Portugal without a fixed address. Acquaintances described him as aggressive, a sociopath, and one even said he hated kids. German investigators made it official. "We are certain Madeleine is dead, and we know who did it." The world froze again. Newsrooms exploded. The McCanns were in shock. They had clung to hope their daughter was alive. But then things got strange. No body, no direct evidence, no charges. The prosecution claimed they had enough information, but Bruckner has not been formally accused. He's serving time for another crime, raping an elderly woman. He denies any link to Madeleine's case, and here, once again, the story stalls, just like 15 years ago. There's a name, a suspect, data, but the truth slips away again. And the question that haunts us all returns: what's going on? If it's Bruckner, why can't anyone prove it yet? Silence answers, a mystery that lingers. Over the years, Madeleine McCann's disappearance stopped being just a case. It became a symbol of fear, helplessness, hope, and an endless pull toward a truth that keeps slipping away. Everyone knew her face. Big eyes, light hair, that unique mark in her pupil. That face became an icon for a generation raised on internet sleuthing and 24/7 news cycles, posters, books, Netflix documentaries, hundreds of journalists, dozens of investigators, thousands of volunteers. The whole planet searched for one child, and yet no one found her. Years have passed. The investigation stalls, but the memory lives on. The world has changed. People have changed. Politicians, judges, even the officers who worked the case, they're different now. But the question remains: where is Madeleine? Who took her that warm May night? And why, nearly 2 decades later, do we still not know? No body, no confession, no final dot. Just guesses, just theories, and just pain for those still searching. And now, a question for you. What do you think? Who's to blame? What really happened? Tell us. Share your theories, doubts, and thoughts in the comments. We're reading, we're discussing, and maybe, just maybe, your voice will one day bring us closer to the answer. Thank you for being with us. This was a podcast where we're not afraid to stare into the shadows. Subscribe to our channel, and see you next time in more stories where the truth hides in the thickest darkness.